I think things are going to get very dramatic in the next few days. They're already fairly dramatic, and we've just had the first person walk across the House and cross from the Conservatives to the Labour Party. And there was a fellow MP who was being interviewed on the BBC, and he could not believe it. The fellow who's just walked is a fellow called Christian Wakeford, and he's part of that group of new MPs who were elected in the Red Wall. And so he obviously realises that Boris's activity pretty well confirms that he will lose his seat at the next election unless he does something pretty clever. He has. So Andrew Bowie was quite surprised and in fact thought this was highly unlikely. He says, I know him personally, and he wouldn't do this sort of thing. And yet at the same time, he has this man who Bowie describes as a solid Conservative who is determined to continue representing the Conservatives. No, he's now a member of the Labour Party. He's the first man to cross. And I'm afraid anybody else who does it now, that's old news. So he seized the initiative. Very good. And what happens now? We've got MPs all the way across that red wall who are going to be seriously wondering whether or not they're going to have a job in a couple of years' time. And all this because of Boris's behaviour. So even if Boris goes, it's not going to change things that much. Now, what about the possible successors? Well, we learned today that Douglas Ross, he's the fellow who heads the Conservatives in Scotland, the fellow who has said absolutely that he was the first person to say in the party that Boris should go. He's been at an event called Fizz with Liz, which Andrew Bowie apparently was also at, and he didn't notice that it was fizzing at all. And anyway, this was a meeting which presumably was testing the possibility that Liz Truss, the Truss as she calls herself, might stand for election as Prime Minister. Now, Tory MPs are clearly scenting blood. They're like wasps around honey. And Liz Truss is definitely a person to look out for. I'm not sure what I think of her, really. She's flip-flopped her way through her career. When she was quite young, she was apparently taken on marches against Mrs. Thatcher, and then she's flipped from being a Remainer to being a pro-Brexiteer. She's flipped, it seems, from being a fervent Boris supporter to being somebody who might replace him. I don't know, really, whether we should trust somebody who is so eager to change their mind for advancement, for personal survival. The same might also go for Christian Wakeford. Would I trust somebody who had crossed the House like that? I'm not sure I would.